I started in music, playing in bands, and looking back, this is what you shouldn't do. Don't name something that the first thing someone says is, "What'd you say?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's, what was that again?
The anti-marketing approach.
And still, they can't say it.
What is it?
You just, hey, man.
What's the name of it?
Rubble Bounce.
Rubble Bounce. Even
Rubble
better.
Bounce. This is why when I talk to you and you say a name for something we have, I go, don't do it. People won't be able to pronounce it. And now it seems so easy to say, but at the time, people didn't understand it. So when I'd say Rubble Bounce, they go Rubble Bucket, Rumble Fish.
That's Craig Golden and Bruce Finkelman, reminiscing about their past lives before they became managing partners and co-owners of the Salt Shed, a brand new, massive indoor-outdoor music venue and community gathering space in Chicago.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So look, like you go.
Oh, this is the balcony.
Yeah.
All right.
Look at the skyline.
Oh my goodness.
So this is what we were talking about, that they brought the salt in and it came up this conveyor belt and went up over into the shed.
So can you just help me with my directions so that I know which? I'm
Right
looking east.
Right east, yeah.
Okay.
And there's where the stage would be during our concert series. So you can kind of see how this place all kind of interacts together, So if you're out here for a concert, you go in there for a drink. But if you're inside for there, you can come outside and just stare at the skyline.
And Goose Island?
And that building right across the way there.
In August of 2022, the Salt Shed opened its doors to the public for the first time, welcoming guests to see some of their favorite bands play at the music venue's very first summer series. The Salt Shed is the most recent project completed by the partners. But before all this, Bruce Finkelman was just a kid in college, on his way to a show.
There was a lady I knew who dragged me to a concert at a very small club called the Blue Note in Columbia, Missouri. I was in the front row. Somebody threw up on my shoe, and I went back there the next day and I got a job and I never left there. And I fell in love with live music, and I was one of the lucky people that decided very early on exactly what they wanted to do, and the rest was just trying to figure out how to dumbly fumble my way through it.
Both Chicago natives, Craig Golden didn't grow up too far away from Bruce.
I grew up in Evanston, just on the other side of the tracks from where Bruce did, but I did a little bit before him. I ended up doing construction to make a living, gave up the night band work, and then started doing real estate. And I was on a board of the North Light Theater here in town, and I met a fellow that wanted to open a little comedy club, and we started to do comedy and then music, and that's where I met Bruce, and that's how we ended up here.
I'm Brian Mon, Chief Innovation and Marketing Officer with Fidelity National Financial, and this is Built, the podcast where you'll meet creative leaders in the commercial real estate industry and hear how they do what they do. In this instance, how they transformed a nearly 100-year-old salt warehouse complex into an indoor-outdoor concert venue and community gathering space they call their fairgrounds. To tell you the story of how they managed to pull off the massive redevelopment of an old salt warehouse to turn it into a state-of-the-art concert venue that includes a guitar shop, a vintage store, food trucks, and more, we have to start at the beginning. It was the early 90s, and Bruce was hard at work running his first club in Chicago.
My first place was called the Empty Bottle. So we had everything that happened inside the Empty Bottle was Empty Bottle, but anything that happened outside the Empty Bottle was Empty Bottle Presents.
The Empty Bottle was once described as a cat-ridden hole in the wall and operated as both a bar and an indie music venue in the Ukrainian village of Chicago.
And we focused on coming up with different plays for artists who didn't want a traditional play.
Okay.
And when we got sick of doing, cemeteries and other weird places like that, and I think the first one was Bon Iver.
Yeah.
And we were looking for a seated place, and somebody brought up the Lakeshore Theater, and it really worked perfectly for us.
When Bruce came, he brought all the music. We were just doing stand-up,
And the thing that was kind of interesting for us and still to this day, I think it entices Craig when we look at things, is it was a different approach to doing something that was normal. Like we could put on a show at a club, right, or anywhere, but
Yeah.
what would it be like if we brought our customers to a comedy club?
Yeah.
Right?
The two instantly hit it off and realized pretty quickly that they had developed a set of skills that the other one was interested in.
The thing that I immediately found myself attracted to in Craig is like, he's a wood shop maker, cabinet maker, real estate guy. You know, these are all the things that I really didn't have any knowledge of. In fact, when I met him, I started talking to Craig about getting probably advice for the first time. Now I'm over my limit with my advice questions, but we were having problems, couldn't get this restaurant called Longman and Eagle off the ground, right? Couldn't find a way to finance this. And I asked Craig, I was like, got any ideas?
Yeah. And I was impressed because we had more than enough good times, but we're doing nothing but lose money, and it wasn't as funny as you would think. I mean, and then Bruce came in and started doing music, and it was like, these guys, they know something,
That's great.
And so it really, it started off very well together.
Craig founded his development company, Blue Star Properties, in 2008. Working together with their hospitality group, 16 on Center, the two partners got busy over the next several years, taking on project after project, renovating, building, and operating a series of venues and commercial properties.
We did a 900 capacity room in Pilsen.
Called Thalia Hall.
That was in a very different shape than it is now. And so we did that, and we did another place called Promontory in Hyde Park.
Okay.
I had done a place, renovated a building in Evanston called Space, which is a music place also with a restaurant in front. And so we had like incremental gains in both knowledge and, experience.
Combining their shared interest in real estate and their mutual adoration for the Chicago music scene, Bruce and Craig built relationships with the artists they booked to play at their venues.
We've managed to create these relationships with these bands that have grown with us from 25 people to 50 people. And these are relationships that we wanted to keep going, that bands would ask us, I can't play in a 350 cap room anymore. What else can we do together, right?
And so the expansion of their business also meant that they could help the artists that they had grown alongside expand as well.
From Space to the Empty Bottle, to moving up to Thalia, to moving up to wherever we wanted to go, this was a great opportunity for us to take these people who we grew up with, right, and bring them along for the next part of it.
I mean, the Alabama Shakes, their first show out of Alabama, they came to Space in Evanston.
Yeah.
And they had 10 songs. That was it. And in between, they got like written up in the New York Times. And so suddenly they show up, for their first show, and they had never really performed together in front of people. And the place was packed. And Brittany Howard, who's the lead singer, she was semi-hyperventilating in our lounge, because you'd just done their songs. Maybe it was 12. But I'm not even sure if it was 12 songs. And everyone's cheering, and she's sitting there breathing heavily. And I said, you okay? And she said, fine, yeah, I'm fine. I said, well, I think you might have to do an encore. And she said, well, we don't really have any other songs. And I said, well, they don't know the songs, so go play your two best ones again, and we can wrap this up, you know what I mean? It'll be great. They'll love it. So, they went out and played, but it's, again, the same thing, like there to Thalia to,
she's playing 2 sold-out shows with us at Thalia.
Yeah, it's solo shows,
Didn't need to do that. She could have played Chicago theater, but because of this relationship, they keep coming back, and we make sure that we take care of them.
We've got 4 acres separated into basically 4 different areas.
Assistant General Manager of the Salt Shed, Drew Perfilio.
We have the garage, which will be Goose Island's Brewing Company's future brew pub. We have the fairgrounds where we do our outdoor concerts. And then the main building is split into 2 smaller buildings. The packing house, where they loaded the salt onto trains and trucks. And this room, which is the shed.
The Salt Shed is roughly a $40 million redevelopment of the Morton Salt Company warehouse. Sat across the river from Chicago's historically industrial Goose Island and located right off the Kennedy Expressway on Elston Avenue, you'd be hard-pressed to miss the building during your commute into Chicago. Bruce and Craig had driven by many times and long been intrigued by this place.
This is a historical landmark that is also a geographical place on the map for the smack dab right in the middle of Chicago.
Right.
And as you drive past it and you look at this thing, the conversations would be like, what's in that place? Or what can we do there? Or could we get in there?
Because of the area's industrial past and the fact that the building had been occupied by the salt makers since 1929, the area hadn't seen a lot of foot traffic in recent decades, though it is accessible.
Where this is located in the city is, if you think about it, it seems very far away, but in reality, it's 6 blocks away from Bucktown Wicker Park, and it's a 6-block walk to the Blue Line stop. So it actually resides in a neighborhood.
After nearly 100 years in the building, the Morton Salt Company decided it was time to sell. Craig and Bruce's hospitality group, 16 on Center, and their development arm, Blue Star Properties, heard about the sale. COO of Blue Star, Tyler Quast.
If you go back to the original kind of start from this whole project, Morton Salt was selling it. A company called R2 was smart enough to see this beautiful asset and figure out an equity partner that had a long-term vision on Chicago and wanted very positive things to stay in Chicago. They loved what this was, what it is, and they wanted to kind of figure out how do we reuse that and keep that as part of the scene of Chicago.
As intrigued as they were by the history and location, Bruce and Craig had initially thought of passing on a project of this size.
How many times did it come across our desk?
Good 3 times, really, before we were stupid enough to say, like, yeah, this would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Let's renovate an old salt shed and turn it into a music venue, you know?
See what happens with that.
Armed with nearly 3 decades of experience renovating smaller buildings throughout Chicago, they decided they wanted in on the opportunity to do the same thing for the salt warehouse.
We love renovating old things. They resonate more to us. And the opportunity came to take like an iconic building, and I think, you know, honestly, I think you might have talked me into it in the end, which is like, you know, it's just a noticeable, recognizable building in a good area of the highway.
Yeah, could you
and we
ask for
started,
more?
you know, we just started like that going, yeah, this could work. Yeah. You know, and then we have a design group inside, so you can lay it out and you can kind of see how many people you can get in it, and I think that's how we ended up working on it. So that was probably about 5 years ago to start.
Nice.
Like, first look.
Craig and Bruce knew it would have been easier to tear down the warehouse and start from scratch. But the building's enormous rooftop sign, featuring the iconic Morton Salt umbrella girl and the Morton Salt slogan, "When it rains, it pours," is woven into both the city's fabric and into Craig and Bruce's lives.
We both remember coming down from where we lived and what that site meant to when you went to Chicago. When you turned that corner, you saw the sign, you were going to Chicago.
Yeah.
And if we had put a white box up there, it would have had nothing to do with Chicago. It would have had nothing to do with this beautiful property. I remember being in a car with my family, and I remember, you know, going downtown but not really knowing what we were going to do. And then you turn the corner and you see that roof and you see that girl, and it's such a known thing from our childhood that it was like that point where you're going, something exciting is going to happen. We're going downtown, and you never really knew what was going to happen because you're a kid. But it's like the old signs that you saw along the highway. These are all part of our childhood, and they're all part of our history. It's got a firm root in how we grew up and why we're in this city and why we're still in this city instead of someplace that's warmer.
But working with the gigantic warehouse complex that had been originally built to manufacture and store salt would make preserving that history considerably more difficult than anyone had anticipated. As they came to learn, not all salt is equal.
For the last period of this building's life, it was not handling table salt.
Assistant General Manager of the Salt Shed, Drew Perfilio.
It was road salt full of all kinds of chemicals that's supposed to melt ice on highways, etc. So yeah, some of the corrosion both to the steel and to the concrete walls was from the salt. Before Morton sold the place, the roof and the south wall were so damaged and corroded by the salt that they drew a line. It says fill line, not fill above here, because above here, the roof is too weak to support the salt. Well, they filled above the line, and the south wall collapsed onto the Acura dealer next door, destroying about 30 cars.
The Morton Salt complex was completed in 1930 and designed by renowned Chicago architectural firm Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. It was built to serve primarily as a storage warehouse for local table salt distribution and as a processing and packaging plant for the company. Barges would deliver the salt to the warehouse via the adjacent river and would come up the conveyor belt that would drop the salt into both sheds.
And there was a gondola at the top of the sheds that would run along these center beams, and it would pour the salt into mounds. And then they would take the salt and they would treat the salt and they would take it to the packing house and they would pack the salt and they would put it on trucks and trains.
We took a tour of the salt shed in early 2024, and it was obvious the space had been updated. But I wanted to know what they were able to keep. Drew Profilio again.
The old roof with the iconic Morton Salt logo and Morton Salt Girl was removed because it was full of all kinds of nasty stuff for insulation, and it just wasn't, quite honestly, acoustically sound. So we replaced it with this more acoustically sound roof. We put these wonderful gym mat-like baffles up everywhere, and we did cloth HVAC instead of big metal tubes, so that this room would sound as good as it does today, which is amazing.
But don't worry, the roof with the iconic Morton Salt logo wasn't gone long.
On the exterior of the roof, we did repaint the classic Morton logo, the Morton Salt Girl, real name Sarah Peldon, that's true, and the logo, when it rains, it pours, which I have tattooed right there. Let's just say I bought in completely.
And he's not the only one donning a Morton Salt tattoo. Bruce Finkelman again.
If you go through our kitchens, right, and if you look at chefs, one of their number one tattoos is the Morton Salt Girl.
When Craig and Bruce first toured the building, they knew not to expect too much.
I think when we came in, there was a lot of pigeons.
A lot of pigeons.
Wonderful home for pigeons, and it was asbestos roof, kind of thing. So it was pretty bare bones.
But looking around, they started to become concerned with how much of the building structure could actually be saved.
Small things like, that maybe to you might be small things, but to us, physically and structurally, they were big things, like trying to save the old steel. And we ended up taking probably 40% of it away just because the salt it really caused it to deteriorate. And I think, we put in some new steel that, fortunately, the roof took about 8 months longer to be put back on, so the steel looks weathered.
Fortunately, they were able to preserve other parts of the building.
One of the things that really got me when we first got in here was the story about the flooring. And the flooring was 2x4s
Yeah,
turned on its side.
2x6s on their side.
2x6s, so for the weight. And if you look up on the ceilings when you're walking through the lobby or the lobby floor, that's how all the floors are. And we were, like you were saying, like hate it or love it, we were able to save it, but it's a much more detailed process to keep them than it is to maybe try another
Right, to
material.
just go over it, and we
Right.
could hardwood.
Right.
That was their heavy structure when they're driving the little bobcats around, was just like butcher block of a 2x6, on a steel structure.
But that's ours, man. That's the way this place is built.
Planning out the features and structures they'd be able to incorporate into what would become the new salt shed might seem like a headache to some, but for Craig and Bruce, that was the exciting part. COO of Blue Star, Tyler Quast again.
They love to work with the organic nature of the things that they're given.
Yeah.
And you can look at this whole thing, and you can't replace a lot of this stuff. And so you wouldn't build it from scratch, but you can only find it in existing product that you can rework and recreate as something that resonates with everybody and is super cool just because of what it is.
As exciting as it was, taking on a redevelopment of this size was still daunting to the real estate developers.
We had never done anything this big, and the chief designer, Eric Lasher, is someone that I had done another project with before, and we had done a food hall with, and we know his sensibility was in line with ours, that, you know, we weren't trying to make over the whole place to look like something else. He understands, like, the idea of keeping it, having the history resonate in the property. And so I think he gave us a lot of comfort laying it out and giving us 3D models, and so that we could see what it would look like. And then, you know, we pretended like that's what it was looking like at the time, and, you know, went out and got a loan and started working, and then COVID hit.
As with almost every development project, the team felt the stress of planning this construction. But Craig and Bruce made good use of this time.
Did it almost become an office building at that point?
It almost became a empty building.
During that time, it was, you know, a project that probably would have moved forward a lot faster. In fact, I think you said it sometime really early to me, which is like if we just knocked this thing down and put a vanilla box and had shows there, we would have been open in, you know, a year or whatever it was, and we'd be off to the races. But I kind of think that time gave us the ability to kind of sit back a little bit, and there wasn't like the hurry up, we got to go.
They also had the fortune of having support from the city, receiving a special designation for their new roof and Morton Salt logo.
They were being as helpful as cities of our size can be, you know, and COVID was a little bit of a hindrance, but, you know.
And this could have been really difficult if the city wasn't with us.
Right.
This could have been extremely difficult.
Or believe that it could be done.
Yeah.
And I think it's maybe more because of our history. I mean, that they at least thought it had a shot, you know. I mean, 'cause
These two losers. Okay.
Yeah. We ended up getting the Chicago landmark status, and I think they were really happy to have this on their plate as things that they've saved.
The Morton Salt complex was organized into 3 main structures: a single-story west shed building on the south end, packaging buildings at the north end, and a garage building in the northeast corner of the site facing Blackhawk Street. So Craig and Bruce had the problem of figuring out how to best make use of that existing space.
I think there was another shed about 60% the size right next door, and you can see the old, you know, structure sitting in the back. We left like a little bit of in the back, and it was condemned, and it was beyond repair, really. And we had thought, well, we'll leave the steel up, we'll do some, you know, events or things inside maybe we'll put a canvas on it, like it'll be like a tent. And we realized financially there was no way to really save it. We all got together and we decided, let's just tear it down and open it up. And that took all of like a day and a half, right? I mean, and so we were standing out there and we looked at each other and we kind of went like, you know, I think we can do outside shows here. You know, and we go, yeah, I think there's enough room to do outside shows, which is a very large part of our business plan, which that was 2 years into renovating and owning the thing, you know what I mean? So then we kind of pivoted and started thinking about inside and outside and added another, you know, bunch of millions of dollars onto the renovation, and we went for it, you know what I mean?
COVID had slowed the construction timeline, but that period also allowed them time to reimagine how the layout and their venue could operate. In fact, a few parts of the salt shed came together in flashes of inspiration, including inside the main concert venue, which has standing room and seats.
Tell me if this is correct, but I think the interior, where the seats, I think you drew that on a napkin, and it pretty much was the way that it was drawn from the first time that we kind of thought about it.
Yeah.
Is that true or false?
That's pretty true.
Yeah.
I think we ended up doing it the way we originally thought, you know.
Other parts of the building, like the private VIP seating boxes, required a bit more creative thinking because the main shed's roof is a huge A-frame.
We didn't know how to put in these boxes, the whole balcony here,
Yeah.
the private boxes, because it's this gable roof like that, you know, and how do you come through the trusses without taking them all out? And so
And how do you keep it
Eric
wide
and
open instead
HBR,
of closing
yeah.
it up, right?
You know, they figured that out, and as best we could do it, and that also worked out that we ended up with a balcony outside that we used for the outside shows as part of a different, seating that you can get for outside shows. And then you can come outside, I think, is where the cones are. So in the summer, when we have outdoor shows, you can sit up here, and we put in speakers right on that beam right there. We have a big grandstand coming that goes over those containers this summer.
Construction of the venue took about 3 years before they were able to welcome the public in for that first summer series in 2022. General Manager of the Salt Shed, Stephanie Foster.
Even that first summer without a building and just our outdoor space, it was still pretty magical. Meanwhile, a lot of construction going on inside.
When Stephanie first joined the shed, she had her work cut out for her.
We didn't have a staff yet. We didn't have a single tent or table or anything. We didn't have a stage, and we were in the process of figuring that out and how to put it all together for a cool summer series.
As construction for what would become the indoor concert venue was still ongoing, Stephanie began the process of hiring staff in preparation for their upcoming concert series.
When we were training our staff and we were walking through the building and showing them all the different areas, we were still under construction. We literally had to go in groups, small groups, through the space wearing hard hats. And I remember having this moment of, what have I done to these poor souls that have agreed to work for us, that we are a couple weeks out from opening our venue. We're walking them through, we're training them, and they're still wearing hard hats. And trying to keep a positive attitude about that. Don't worry, guys, this is totally going to get done. We're totally on track. And thinking, gosh, I hope that's true. Gosh, I hope that's true.
And it was. They managed to successfully pull off a 13-concert series through the months of August and September of 2022, kicking off with a great slate of artists well known to the city of Chicago.
We had Death Cab for Cutie, we had Jason Isbell, we had Fleet Foxes, we had Andrew Bird, a Chicago icon, and we were actively constructing the indoor space. So an artist was sound checking outside, and inside people were drilling and laying plumbing and electrical and bringing it all together. So there was this juxtaposition of, we're putting on a show tonight, we are actively under construction.
That juxtaposition may have been felt by the team, but outside, the attendees had plenty of things to enjoy. Drew again.
We pop up all kinds of outdoor bar activations, from your standard full bar setup to bars that highlight our brand sponsors and partners. Anything you want at a summer show out there, you can get, from a hot dog to a smash burger to a 24-ounce beer and a plastic baseball bat.
And after seeing the way that people even kayaked up the river to enjoy some of those summer concerts, they're not done thinking about how to take advantage of the water facing property.
Someday there'll be a dock there, and we will be Bruce and Craig's kayak rentals.
We will be getting dozens of people from the river coming to our shows.
But it's a really...
Tens of people coming off their fancy boats.
But if you think about it, like, that was one of the craziest things from the outdoor shows, is like, at these shows, which were more people than, I've hosted
in my house.
Right. The river was full of boats and kayaks in nighttime listening to the show.
Because it's a unique view. It's kind of the working person's view of Chicago. It's not, just the lakefront. It's really the back of the buildings and stuff. So with a show going, it's pretty badass.
While the outdoor concert series was underway, construction continued inside for another few months before the indoor venue was open to the public, at which point guests could finally see what was inside the new salt shed. Stephanie Foster again.
Our first public indoor show was in February of 2023. It was Big Gigantic, which is an EDM, it's a dance crowd. We were completely sold out, and I think our staff were just wide-eyed, trying to make sure that we did this right and made a good first impression. When you go inside, you see a completely renovated space that still is an obvious nod to the history of it. It's old wood floors, it's old beams, it's old brick. You see that the original is still there, and it really just helps you to feel like you're stepping back in time in a way.
With 4 acres of space available to them on the property, they took care to curate the space with shops and other offerings so that guests could have a chance to have something that went beyond just a music-going experience.
We wanted the place to be filled with makers. You have things that almost put it to being music being a secondary factor, right? Like you're walking into this place, there's drinks, you have food trucks out there, you have a fire pit going on, you have Goose Island that's bringing their original pub over across on our property. This is a very blue-collary type of building and history with this. And, I think we're both enamored with people who make things. Be it from, there was a woman who was making guitar straps who we really liked, or Fret 12, who are doing guitars and stuff over there. But I think to have a place where people can come in and experience those things as just part of what they do when they go out or they want to experience something, I think those are things that we get really excited about.
Let's go through this. So my goodness, this is fantastic.
Alongside planning and curating a unique guest experience, designing the green rooms and a backstage area for the artists who are booked to play at the Salt Shed was equally important.
So these are 2 green rooms. Green room
Yeah,
A and
so-
B, and they can be opened up.
Exactly, so that in case they don't like each other, like it's Hall and Oates, and they're suing each other, and we can put them in 2 different rooms.
Artist tour schedules can be grueling. Many of them tour with an opening band and spend weeks or months living on a bus, traveling from location to location together.
What's a normal green room look like? Because I don't think they look like this, do they?
No, they really don't. You're either in the basement on a couch, or there's a room about a little bit smaller than this that has a little fridge in the corner. And not that it, I don't want to throw any shade, but that's it.
Yeah.
That's what you
Oh
get.
yeah, this is very
Yeah.
nice.
Having developed those strong relationships with many of the returning artists who had been playing at Craig and Bruce's smaller music venues for years, they wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to design something that went above and beyond the standard green rooms they were used to.
This whole complex back here, this was like such a big part of the design of this place, was to make sure that artists, when they came here, knew that we cared about them as much as they cared about their audiences.
Yeah, we set the table, and like anyone else in your home, when you set a nice table and everybody's happy, you're like, oh, and they leave, and you go like, great, what a nice night, you know what I mean? And so that's how we feel every night we can.
The backstage facilities include many wish list items that they thought artists would be happy to see. Stephanie again.
They want to see a lot of showers. They want to see a good catering room. They want to see really comfortable spaces to lounge. They want to see laundry on site. Really, really simple things, but at the same time, a lot of venues aren't able to do that. Older facilities aren't always able to retrofit in that way. And we were able to kind of custom build what we felt was going to be the best case scenario for an artist experience.
And the feedback they got for their efforts was overwhelmingly positive.
The first, was it Iggy Pop, that came out on the stage and, went like, you guys don't know what's going on back behind these curtains, but there's like a 4-star hotel back there, and it's great. They got a toilet that heats, and it was like, it was like,
That was
we
Iggy
did
Pop.
it right, Iggy Pop. He knows the difference.
Is it ever hard to get them to leave? It's so nice.
I know, sometimes they do. Hey, you want to stay for another show?
And they really did try to think of everything.
Okay, so where are we right now? We're
So
on the other side.
you're on the side of the stage. So the bands would be really where the screen is.
Yeah.
And we use this area here, all this couch area, as when bands are here. These are their friends and family. So instead of having tickets and seats, we just give them this whole area. I mean, we put in sound for them too, but I mean, they kind of hang out here. So, but agents, managers, people don't want to be with the unwashed masses. I mean, they'll stay here. But it's really the artists.
It gives us the ability to change this space up, and you can have 2 private events happening here.
Right.
Outside of the backstage area, there's plenty of places to stand and watch the show. Here's Drew again.
Our GA floor seats 2,700 people, or not, I shouldn't say seats, they stand. General admission standing floor. One of the cool things that separates the Salt Shed from other concert venues is the general admission standing area isn't only on the floor in front of the stage. The area we're in on the side of the grandstand and the very top of our grandstand is also general admission. But for younger shows, newer artists, GA floor always fills up first. Those guests line up outside for hours, sometimes days, sometimes multiple of days, to be the first people into the venue so they can rush that stage and get right up in front of everybody.
In addition to the general admission standing area, guests who prefer to be seated during the show have plenty of options too. Courtesy of that initial design Craig drew up on that napkin.
So while 2,700 of our closest friends can get nice and cozy with each other on the GA floor in front of the grandstand, the first 3 rows of the grandstand have super plush seating, kind of like lean back in a movie theater style plush seating. The rest of the rows of the grandstand are just regular plush, not super plush. Some of the most comfortable seats I've ever sat in a concert venue. And just for insiders, the absolute best sound in the building is row B, seat number 4.
Watching people come inside, getting to experience the concert in the seats and stands he drew up years prior, reminds Craig of why they do it in the first place.
We like to do things that we enjoy ourselves, so we like to create things like that. And we're just about, I think good development is, kind of a mashup between naivete and over self-confidence, where you look at something, you're like, yeah, we could do this, and then you're naive enough to think it's going to work, and you spend the next 5 years doing it. And it can't be, I think it's safe to say, more pleasurable and exciting for us to be in the venue watching a band that we like.
Absolutely.
And so it's great. We're like fans, you know.
And for the staff who work at the Salt Shed, it's pretty great too. Stephanie again.
I will say we also get a lot of inquiries of people who want to work here, and it's because they've come to a show and they just thought it was the greatest thing ever. Or they'll come to us and say, I keep buying tickets to all of your shows and it's getting expensive. So if I could work here, that would be better.
The Salt Shed has a staff of over 250 people, all of whom are deeply invested in ensuring every show is a great one.
I think we have a really great team of leaders, managers that aren't interested in settling for second best. I think we all want this to be the best experience it could possibly be. We love going to concerts. We're all so passionate about live music that I think for us, making sure that it is the best concert experience in the city, making sure that we just completely blow people away has always been our number one goal.
Stephanie hopes that working at the Salt Shed can serve as a stepping stone for employees who have higher ambitions in the music industry.
Maybe they're coming onto our team as a security guard or working in the box office selling tickets, or they're ushering guests in our grandstand. But for them, that might really truly be the start of a career in the music industry. And I've seen a lot of sides of it myself and have those connections. And a really fun part of it for me is seeing that fire and people who want to make a career out of this and finding pathways and connections that can bring them that experience and further their careers.
The Salt Shed has been welcoming guests to its shows and fairgrounds for over a year now, though Stephanie says things are still developing and changing all the time.
We're constantly learning, and we're still in that phase where there might be a first time we're doing something. So, okay, it's our first time doing a market with a bunch of vendors outside, or it's our first time, we had the Blackhawks #1 draft pick party, first drone show we've ever had. So we're constantly looking at that opportunity to improve and make it better. And our conversations are always about the guests and their experience. It's always our focus.
The community response to the venue has been strong, with the Salt Shed even snagging a couple of awards this past year.
So we've had an amazing response in our first year of opening, and the Chicago Reader just came out with their list for 2023, and we were voted the best venue in the city of Chicago, which I think is a pretty auspicious beginning for our first year. We also won the Polestar Award for Best New Venue in the country. There are 2 categories for that based on capacity. So the large venue that won this year was the Sphere in Vegas, which everyone's talked about. What a cool thing. And we were the smaller venue that won for our capacity category. And that's a really amazing bit of company to be in. So we're doing something right if they're voting for us.
Tyler Quast.
No one creates stuff like this anymore. And so how do you use it in a way in which people can embrace it and understand what it was and enjoy what it is? And I think that's why you do this kind of, redevelopment, adaptive reuse.
Reflecting on what they've accomplished, Craig and Bruce feel that what they've built is a true representation of who they are and what they do.
As a Chicagoan, this is very much part of my Chicago and, our neighborhood Chicago. So when you have a place that's like this, be it a music venue or be it someplace that does other things, for me it was really important to bring this to the city as part of a community, as part of a neighborhood, as part of something that everybody could join. It's like a park for the people that live in Chicago.
I mean, we are general contractors, we're a design group, we're promoters, we're owners and operators of venues. So we have all of this interest, and this was, as I like to say, it's a great way to keep us off the streets. It's a unique way to put all of those things together so that we get busy, and we're busy for a time, and it's more of an expression of who we are. None of these things, we're not looking because we need it, We're looking because we like this stuff.
Now when you drive down the Kennedy Expressway and look out towards Goose Island, you'll see that rooftop Morton Salt logo, but with a fresh coat of paint. And of course, the chance to pull off at the Division Street exit and see what's inside. Drew again.
The way I hear people tell it is when they were growing up in whatever suburb they grew up in, when they knew they were downtown, when they saw the roof of the Morton Salt factory from the highway. Like, now we know we're in Chicago. And none of those people who saw that was a landmark to them, a signpost, ever thought they would be inside it, let alone seeing a concert inside it, or hang out on that part of the Chicago River, always hidden from view around Goose Island. These are secret pockets of a city they thought they knew, that they moved to, that they live in, that they're now getting to experience for the first time through the eyes of Blue Star and 16 on Center and the artists who hit our stage.
To see photos of our visit to the Salt Shed in Chicago, visit BuiltPodcast.com. Built is a co-production of Fidelity National Financial and PRX Productions. From FNF, our project is run by Annie Bartelos. This episode was produced by Morgan Flannery and edited by Genevieve Sponsler. Production support by Emmanuel Desarme. Audio mastering by Rebecca Seidel. Our location producer is Lou Carloso. The executive producer of PRX Productions is Jocelyn Gonzalez. Special thanks to our guests, Craig Golden, Bruce Finkelman, Drew Profilio, Stephanie Foster, and Tyler Quast. I'm Brian Mon. If you like what you hear, tell a friend in commercial real estate about us. And remember, every story is unique, every property is individual, but we're all a part of this built world.
From PRX.